Okay. Right. Thanks, guys, for joining at such short notice. Obviously, you know exactly what we're going to talk about. I'm just calling up my notes here, and then away we go. There we go. Okay. And just chip in at any time. I know it's a little difficult, but perhaps if you've got something that you want to say, please just put your finger up like this, and I'll make sure that that you come into the conversation. Otherwise, it's very, very easy to overtalk, and then it all becomes a bit of a mishmash. Great. I'll give literally a 3.5 second sting, and then we go straight into it. Already. Well, it's unprecedented. A collaborative investor letter that was written today or sent today by 36 asset managers who between them control more than 3.5 trillion rands worth of assets. They sent it to the chairman, Koos Becker, and the lead independent director, Hendrik de Tooy, of the Process Naspers grouping. 4 of them are with us today. Thank you very much for joining us at such short notice. Perhaps we can kick off with you, Asif Mohammed. Asif is the CIO of Aon Investment Managers. What is the whole purpose behind? Well, no, I won't do that. Let's rather start on a different note. We've known each other for decades, Asif. I've never seen anything like this before. It seems unprecedented, is it?
Yes, it is unprecedented. It's never happened before. There have been collaborations with about 3, 4, 5 asset managers in South Africa. And credit to Delphine, for putting it together. And we've managed to get 35 asset managers globally. I think also there's a couple of other people also helped with that, other asset managers. I think it's unprecedented in terms of collaboration and the effort. The question is really whether we're going to achieve the desired objective or not, and whether Naspers management and process management are going to listen to us, and whether they're going to, like they've done before, steamroller transactions, before, and they say they listen. Whether they really listen and do what we want is a different issue. Yeah.
Delphine, is this all your work? Is this what Asif is telling us?
I think there was every grouping and any collaboration needs a facilitator. So I was just handling logistics, and someone had to kind of be the one that emailed the letter to the company. It was very much 36 firms, equally contributed in terms of the collaboration. Just Perpetua's a co-signatory along with the other 35. But I think the point that Asif makes is that it is unprecedented, but it's really more than just the action. It's the heart of the action. What goes to the heart of the action? Why would 36 typical competitors decide to agree? And I think it comes down to the foundational element that all of us, doesn't matter whether it's 200 asset managers in South Africa or thousands globally, there's one thing that we are all meant to be, and that's responsible investors. And this really goes to the heart of stewardship, and that the collaboration is focusing on what we have in common, which is that we have to be responsible stewards. And we didn't believe that as we all separately assessed this transaction, we didn't believe that if we went silent without voicing concerns, and when we discovered there were so many collective concerns, that we would be discharging our stewardship duties effectively without bringing these concerns. And I think the important point to note just before others step in is that it's not as though concerns have not been raised with the executive management. And this letter was actually directed directly to the non-execs. It was an escalation to go directly to the non-execs and say, we feel as though some of the concerns haven't been heard. And we just want to, re-emphasize them.
Delphine Govender is the chief executive and founder of Perpetua Investment Managers. She's also a former Alan Gray rock star investor. I see Alan Gray's not in this group. Neither is Old Mutual. Neither is Sanlam. Neither is Liberty Coronation 91. I can't say did you reach out? Did the 36 companies involved here not reach out to them, or did they just not want to join?
They were reached out to. It's an interesting point because one of the things the process actually highlighted is that the whole process of collaborative engagement should become much more formalized in South Africa. There should be better structures, independent structures created, and hopefully out of this that will come, and maybe organizations like the PRI, which many of us are signatories to, could facilitate such a process of collaboration. So they were reached out to. I think it's, some of the larger managers are used to paddling their own canoes and need to be seen to be doing that.
Anthony Sedgwick is the director of ABAX Investments. Anthony, before we go into the nuts and bolts of all of this, I see the Public Investment Commissioners are involved. So the PIC is part of the whole process. From your perspective, was it easy enough to join, to collaborate in this with the other 35 asset managers?
Very easy, Alec. We, chatting to the other managers when we were first approached, we were delighted to find that so many other people shared the frustrations that are listed in the letter that we have. We've made every effort now for several years to try and raise these on the agenda with the executive directors, all of which have sadly failed completely. And so we were delighted to. So many other people had a similar experience, and were having to resort to having to escalate it in the manner that we have.
So Bob van Dijk and Basil Skoros are not listening. They might have heard what you said, but they're not acting on it. Is that the message that I'm to take from that comment that you made?
That's certainly the case, yes. We know that they're under the direction of a board of directors. And so it's been an extremely frustrating process. We were opposed to the original listing of Prosus. If you look at the subsequent experience that shareholders have had with the further widening of the discount, that has been a completely failed transaction. And we think that the current one, as it's proposed, is a step backwards rather than a step forwards. And it's very disappointing to find that, the management and the board of the company are diametrically opposed to the opinion of not just ABAX, but apparently 36 other people. And we know from our discussions that those larger organizations that you've just mentioned, who aren't signatories to the document, share our feelings and are engaging with the firm directly themselves, expressing similar reservations.
Well, the fourth of our guests today is Shane Watkins, who's the Chief Investment Officer of All Weather Capital. Shane, the letter is addressed to Koos Bekker, the chairman, and to Hendrik du Toit as the lead independent non-executive director. Now, Hendrik du Toit is also the founder of 91 Asset Management. So I guess it wouldn't surprise anybody that 91 is not a signatory of this letter, but it also raises some pretty big question marks about what side of the fence they sit on if their founder is on the board. Are you hoping that perhaps by addressing it to Hendrik that you'll open some doors here?
Hi, Alec. Well, look, obviously it was sent to Hendrik in his capacity as a lead independent non-exec of Naspers. Look, Hendrik is obviously a very smart, very accomplished guy, and he must recognize the conflict of interest that he obviously faces and the potential reputational damage that can accrue to him or 91, if he doesn't deal with this matter properly. One of the catalysts, I think, for bringing this, 36 asset managers together, was, I think, the way that management conducted the conference call after they announced this cross-holding transaction, where Chris Wood from Prudential asked what I thought was a very legitimate question, and he was spoken to in an extraordinarily rude and discourteous way by Bob van Dijk. I thought the issue he raised was completely legitimate, and Bob, I think, didn't respond appropriately. And the way that I would characterize this is I would say to the Naspers board that, of course, they're entitled to their own opinion, but they're not entitled to their own facts. The facts are there right in front of us. And Bob van Dijk, up until now, in terms of the outcomes he's achieved, has been a terrific disappointment. Okay? I mean, there are numerous transactions we can point to that have left $5 and $10 billion plus on the table. Okay? As Andy Sedgwick said, he listed Prosus and the Naspers discount has widened. We're actually worse off. So I really think that the board has got to consider whether interventions of Bob van Dijk have been successful, and in my opinion, they need to reconsider his suitability in his role.
Is he not under a lot of pressure? Because both Bob and Basil Skordos have put their necks on the line to say they will reduce the discounts. They've done a lot to attempt to do that. And as you say, nothing's happened yet. So surely from a board and shareholder position, there would be a lot of stress, which might account for that knee-jerk reaction in the conference call.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, all I'm saying is, measured by the outcomes, things are not going according to plan.
Asif, from your perspective, why did you sign this letter? And I think I'd like to ask all of the four of you this. Clearly, you'd be representative of the group generally, and you could maybe also highlight what part of the proposal that was put on the table on the share exchange offer between Naspers and Prosus is what triggered you into this action.
Okay, the first thing, I think there's simpler solutions around it. I don't really want to go into the solution, and it's been, touted by international investors. There is a simple solution to unlock the discount. I think what they're trying to, maybe I should go into that, but what they're trying to do, what the solution is, list Tencent separately in Prosus, unbundle all the other stuff, the classifieds, the delivery business and stuff like that, and that can stand its own. My guess is, and I've said gone on record, is that they're using the Tencent investment and the Tencent dividends as a crutch for that other expansion program. If they want to, and that I have a problem with. I mean, they made a great investment. Tencent has worked out really well, and give them credit for that. But I think, to unlock the discount, to get additional value, they need to separate the two. The other thing that they've done is also, they did the share buyback, they announced, and they did most of it, $5 billion. They've lost it all. The discount has widened. Is Bob and his team, on the board, are they going to pay back all these incentive awards and massive amounts of excessive remuneration? Highly unlikely, no. They're not going to take accountability for that. So what they've done in this specific instance, it's not worked. We can criticize them on other transactions and all of those things, but these are the broad issues. The cross-holding we've got a problem with, and the complexity that arises with the cross-holding. Cross-holdings are out globally, and the incentivization, where the costs are, and all of those things. So those are two broad issues. There are other issues also, but let's just focus on the two broad issues.
Asif, I did ask Bob van Dijk in the media conference call that I was in after this deal, why don't they list Tencent separately? And his reaction was, well, we're on the board of Tencent and we learn a lot from Tencent. And without having that close relationship, we would be at a disadvantage. Do you not buy that?
No, I certainly don't buy that. I'd rather pay his fees to go to Harvard Business School than use that argument. You can still see what they're doing by their financial statements and all of those things and where they invest. I mean, it's a very expensive school fees, $5 billion to learn that. I mean, it's, they did the share buyback, it's not working. The other reasons, yeah, I don't buy it. If they came back to me and said there was a tax issue or something like that, and they haven't come back saying that there's a tax issue or other leakage or anything else, then we'll listen to it. And if they've got a valid argument, we'll support them. But so far, I've not had an alternative view on that.
Delphine, why did you decide on behalf of Perpetua to sign this letter?
Yeah, no, I mean that's the question, and I think, and why now? Because as my colleagues have pointed out, you could work out when do you go back in time and start working out, kind of when things started to become a little bit murky here. But really, it came down to the fact that there was this proposed transaction on the table, which is this, Prosus voluntary exchange offer for the Naspers shares, and really locating the concerns that triggered from this transaction and what this transaction meant in terms of just the overall investment case, and then specifics of the transaction. I think this is where things start to get a little bit almost complicated, because management have like almost singularly put forward one single reason for this transaction, which is that they're trying to reduce the Naspers weights in the SWIX effectively. That's effectively what they're saying. And that's the single reason that's continuously underlined. But actually, the concerns that arise from the transaction because of what is required to be done in order to bring that objective to bear, their core objective, is hugely complicated. And so when you look at the concerns, and I think this is where Perpetua started to really get interested, was that they locate themselves in two elements. First, problematic responses to some of the reasons management have put forward. So we don't agree with management's contention that that's a good enough reason, but that's kind of a commercial rationale for the transaction. And then on the basis that they're proceeding, the exchange ratio that they're offering Naspers shareholders to swap out for the process. But then more importantly are the governance concerns. And I think that's always the overarching element. We think governance at Prosus and Naspers worsens through this transaction. There's more opacity, there's more complexity. We don't think it improves. Now, if we had better visibility, what comes after this, perhaps we could see it, but it's just perplexing why a board of incredibly esteemed non-execs would want to prevail over a transaction that unequivocally worsens governance.
Shane, you have an additional point to that. Sorry.
Sure. So look, Alec. I mean, as Delphine said, they say we need to do this transaction to reduce the weight of Naspers on the JSE because that's why the discount is there. It's because the weighting is too big. I mean, that's completely nonsense. Okay, Prosus is less than 1% of the European index it's in, and it also trades at a 35% discount. So the argument that Naspers is too big and that's why the discount is there is just nonsense. They need to explain to us what the reason for the Prosus discount is then.
And the reason why you signed this letter?
Look, I think what they're doing is utterly wrong. I think that they are it's very evident that there are corporate governance problems at Naspers. And the reason that those problems persist is because there's an N-share structure where ordinary shareholders can't remove directors by a simple vote. And this is an arrogant, dismissive executive supported by a board that are not doing their job.
But they would probably say you knew this before you invested in the first place, i.e. that there are N shares and that they do have these control structures that exist.
Sure, and that's completely true, but that doesn't mean that you can flout corporate governance just because you have a structure that doesn't allow you to be removed.
Anthony, your thoughts on this and also the reasons why you signed the letter?
Alec, I think the team have covered the points pretty accurately already, and I'm just going to repeat what's already been communicated. We share all the concerns that have been raised already. This is a very badly constructed transaction. It is not in the interests of Prosus shareholders. It is definitely not in the interests of Naspers shareholders, and we'll be encouraging our clients, and to the extent that we have the mandate to do so, we'll be voting against the transaction and certainly not tendering any Naspers shares. This is a terrible deal.
So what do other Naspers shareholders, the many South Africans who own the shares in a private capacity, your advice presumably to them would also be to vote against the deal?
Yes, it will be my strongest advice that they do so. The board of this company have consistently applied a strategy of a divide and conquer. And the only thing they're going to understand is when not just all 36 of us who've signed the letter, but all 84,000 Naspers shareholders out there, get up, come to the AGM, voice your opinions, send a message back to the boards of these two companies of just what a terrible deal this is and what a shocking proposal it is to present to shareholders.
Asif, how are you going to get, as we come to the end of this conversation, and I'd also like to get all of your views on this, how are you going to get the pressure or the necessary pressure to do the simple solution, as you've suggested, which is unlock value by unbundling Tencent. The problem every Naspers shareholder today has is that if I sell the shares, even though I don't like what management are doing, if tomorrow their sanity prevails and they unlock Tencent, the share price would rocket. So you're kind of caught as an investor between a rock and a hard place.
It comes down to the two questions you made about, you said, you went in and you knew the high voting structure in this thing. And that's the point. I first want to address that, and it answers the second question you've got. When 2 or 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, at the AGM, it says, why do you still have these high voting shares? And Koos says, the chairman, it's to satisfy the Chinese government because they don't want an Apple or Google with big, deep pockets of money to buy that. And I buy that argument. But I said, you shouldn't be using these high voting shares to exploit corporate governance and to push through deals and that there. And that was a crucial and key concern. What I'm saying on the case of Tencent is not unbundling. What you do is you leave Tencent in process and you unbundle all the rest. You still have the high voting position there, but you only use it to satisfy the Chinese government, not to push through REM or steamroll any other transactions or whatever the case might be, and poor governance. That's what you do. That's exploiting. That's old apartheid style tactics, by the way. Certain people had the votes, and now that and they do that. So that's my, if you might call it, the answer to that. Will it go forward? I think, with Anthony and, saying, and everybody else saying we vote against, go to the AGM in force, whether it's virtually or whatever, make our voices heard, and hopefully sanity prevails. That's all we can hope for. Do bear in mind that the Naspers, they hold 72% of process, and they'll vote at 72% in favor without the high voting shares. So what we've got to do is possibly argue there's a conflict of interest or interested party on the 72% on the one side, which may or may not succeed. But I think our biggest position is a voice, as Angie said, the loud voice, and we need to go out there and really make our views heard, because the buyback of that 5 billion rand is essentially gone, wasted, and it hasn't narrowed the discount. We can talk about other transactions also, but that's essentially the point I'm trying to make.
Delphine?
Yeah, so I think, as to Asif's point and Ant's point, is that there's an interesting situation, because the management and the board know very well that actually they don't need process shareholders to vote in favor, the outside process shareholders to vote in favor of it, because Naspers owns 72% and they can just vote in favor, and Bob's your uncle, as they'd say, so they can do it. But the reality is much more, if they know that that's the case, if this is a fait accompli. So the point is that, do they still proceed? Clearly they are, based on the SENS announcement they released last night, which made it very clear that they firmly believe, the 15 non-execs and the 2 execs firmly believe that this transaction is in the best interest of Naspers and process shareholders. They believe it's going to unlock value. So, we have to assume that's proceeding and that shareholders don't have much say on the actual vote. So the question is, what do you have a say on? And to Ant's point, you have a say on whether you choose, it's voluntary, to tender your shares or not. So Naspers shareholders can absolutely say, we are not happy with the terms. We think the exchange ratio is not equitable, notwithstanding what management say. And that as a result, failing there being a change and an improvement in the exchange ratio, we will not be tendering our shares. And I think that's a very important message that Naspers shareholders have, since it is voluntary, and yeah, you have no compulsion to do so.
So 84,000, you'd like to get as many of those 84,000 to follow in those footsteps, Shane, to actually vote against this transaction. But it sounds to me like you'd like it to go a little bit further, to maybe use this as a catalyst to focus more on the mismanagement by management.
So I think before this gets to a vote, Alec, what we would like is I would like the board to have an objective review of the performance of the executive management, and specifically Bob van Dijk. Okay, Bob crows about the value they've added and the great performance, and as I say, if you strip out the 10-cent share price uplift, the performance that he's delivered is negative. Okay, and his actions, and I presume this is driven by him as the CEO, this proposal by him as the CEO has created tremendous bad feeling and animosity and mistrust. And I would like the board to examine his conduct and performance objectively and say, is he really doing a great job worthy of hundreds and hundreds of millions of rand per annum or not? I mean, I would simply argue based on the facts, he's not.
Anthony, final word from you.
You're crazy to tender your shares. Send as strong a message as you can. This is a terrible deal, and you should oppose it in whatever way you're capable of doing.